again from Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin, broadcasting from Rigel Studios here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns, related politics, and self-defense issues. Fired Up is on my website, Fired Up with Bob Irwin, as well as the American Guns and Glory Network, YouTube, and numerous other media. If your local internet provider doesn't carry Fired Up, ask them to do just that, and we'll walk them through it. A new show is posted every Thursday around 5 p.m. Pacific time. Our audio feed is rebroadcast for radio listeners on Saturdays at noon on the Nevada Talk Network. You can check out KELY1230.com for a station in your area. If you have questions or comments, send me an email at bob at firedupmail.com. That's bob at firedupmail.com, or leave a message on my office recorder, which is 702-257-1060. That's 702-257-1060. If you don't leave contact information, I can't call you back. A little aside here about the Bob at Fired Up Mail. We discovered that somewhere in my computer there was a glitch, and we lost that mail. It wasn't coming across to my home computer. That got fixed, and I discovered I had 9,567 emails that I hadn't read. Glad it didn't get to 10,000. I went through about 100 of them, and they were about 90% ads. The rest, I simply just didn't have the time to call. So if you've sent me an email and I didn't respond to it, which I always will if I have your contact information, try it again, bob at firedupmail.com, and I should pick it up. If not, if I don't answer, my general email, bobmirwin@gmail.com, should work for you also. That one works, I know. Okay, now, there are several hundred defensive uses of firearms each week in the United States, rarely covered or fully covered by mainstream media. I always select a few for each of my shows for my listeners' education. Most are good shootings, some are questionable, some are just plain wrong, but all are educational for those of you that keep a defensive firearm in your home or carry one for self-defense in your vehicle or on the street. Individual incidents are generally adjudicated under local law, so the advice given here might not apply in the area where you live. Advice from a local gun-savvy defense attorney is always recommended if you're involved in something that involves shooting or pointing your firearm. Stories are often paraphrased for clarity by translation by me from police jargon, lawyer speak, and regional accents into more standard American English. The incidents are as reported, but names of the individuals involved are deleted. The identification of the cops, the lawyers, and the media are generally used. So here we go. This first story is from AL.com News 2, journalist by the name of Ashley Rumkus, reported October 9, 2020, a 32-year-old Alabama woman who killed a man accused of raping her has pleaded guilty to murder. She was sentenced to 20 years, court records show, but the sentence was split for her to serve 18 months in the Jackson County Jail and 18 months of house arrest, followed by the equivalent difference on probation. Because she will receive credit for the months she spent in jail awaiting trial, she will be released to house arrest in about 7 months, according to her attorney. The 32-year-old mother of 4 was taken back to jail after pleading guilty in Jackson County Circuit Judge Jennifer Holt's courtroom. That will loom large in a minute. She pleaded guilty to killing a male acquaintance in the kitchen of her home on the morning of January 16, 2018. That is just hours after she said the male acquaintance raped and strangled her. Her murder case was set for trial next month. Her story has drawn national media attention and raised questions about how abused women are treated in the criminal justice system in Alabama. Defense attorney, his name is Ron Smith, no relation, different Smith, said the plea deal was hatched through discussions with the Jackson County prosecutors. In any case, you've got to weigh what you know and can control with what you can't, Attorney Smith said in a telephone interview. We have no control over a jury or a judge that would sentence her. If the case went to trial and the 32-year-old mother was convicted, she would have faced up to life in prison. The defendant's boyfriend said he still believes she's innocent. He said she was scared, she was backed against the wall, afraid she was going to spend the rest of her life in prison. Her attorney, Ron Smith, argued that a stand your ground hearing earlier this year that she killed the deceased male acquaintance in defense of herself and her brother. She testified that when her brother came over to confront the accused rapist about the rape, the men fought. She told the judge she fatally shot the male acquaintance while he held her brother in a headlock and threatened to kill them all. Judge Jennifer Holt denied the 32-year-old mother's request for immunity from prosecution under Alabama's self-defense law, saying she had not proven that the killing was legally justified. This is getting more complicated now. That decision set off a series of appeals. The 34-year-old mother and her lawyers unsuccessfully urged the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals and the state's Supreme Court to overturn Holt's stand your ground ruling. The defense also lost appeals to have Judge Holt removed from the case, alleging she was biased against the defendant. The judge denied those allegations. The 32-year-old mother's bail was revoked on her murder charge after she was arrested on an unrelated arson charge. If she is convicted of the arson charge, the sentence will run concurrently with her sentence in the murder case. So that becomes a non-starter, obviously. Here we go. A stand your ground law defense proves not quite so simple. From the plain reading of the facts of the incident, which I went through just previously, this certainly appears to be as a clean defensive shooting. The claim of bias on the part of the trial judge is an interesting twist. If the judge is involved in some other way with the deceased's family or their acquaintances, she should clearly withdraw. If the defense is just throwing that out without any evidence, it's a foolish tactic that will diminish the lawyer's credibility in future cases. The district attorney, Jason Pierce, reportedly did not return calls from media about this case. This, you're going to look this up online. It's become a big deal in the Alabama courts. Where this is going, I have no idea. Anyway, if I get more, which hopefully I will, we'll follow up in 2 or 3 weeks to see what happened. We're going to stop now for a few words from some of our friends and associates. I'll be right back. Freestyle Martial Arts, located at Jones and Russell here in Las Vegas. You can reach them at 702-551-9009. That's 702-551-9009. CCS Gunsmithing. Chris Eifelt, the man who does all the NRA help, he's at 2216 South Rainbow Boulevard near Sahara. He can be reached at 702-365-1732. Once again, 702-365-1732. Jerry Creed, a trust attorney. If you have a firearms trust or need one, this is your guy. You can reach Jerry at 702-806-7777. That is 702-806-7777. CCW Maggie is found all over the internet. You can reach her by phone at 702-375-5900. That's 702-375-5900. All sorts of firearms training, ladies only classes. She is the best of the best. Call CCW Maggie. And we are back. Fox 2 Detroit, a journalist named Camille Amari, reported October 10, 2020 in, here we go, Hamtramck, Michigan. Hopefully I'm close. Police say the suspect stabbed the store owner in the head, but the owner defended himself and shot the suspect 4 times. Both men were taken to a nearby hospital. Mark Gabarino, the Hamtramck Community Safety Director, said, "We had a stabbing and a shooting. I don't know of any of our jewelry stores where they were not armed, so this is very foolish for someone to do that here." He added, "The store owner was talking to our officers and giving us details, so I'm fairly certain he will probably be okay." Both men are still alive after the incident, which happened at Naya's Jewelry Friday afternoon. It's N-A-Y-A, Naya's Jewelry. Investigators aren't disclosing the extent of their injuries, but they did say the store owner is expected to recover. The whole incident happened so fast, the suspect was never able to try to steal anything, investigators said. Karen Majewski is the mayor of Hamtramck. She is also the owner of the Tekka Vintage. That's the shopping center where this took place. She said this is really surprising and shocking because we don't have a lot of foot traffic here, and that's the kind of thing we are known for. She's referring to being known for foot traffic. Investigators, this is my commenting on this now, investigators say the whole incident happened so fast, the suspect was never able to try to steal anything. So perhaps this incident was perhaps not a robbery attempt, but rather a random stabbing by a deranged individual. Try to imagine what would have happened if this store, or the store owners as well as homeowners, chose not to keep a means of self-defense handy. They're all taking a serious risk. 4 shots without a lethal hit is typical sudden panic accuracy. Try for some practice time. It's really important. It's sort of like your life depends on taking the time to practice, you think? This next story is from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. A journalist named Jack Howland, a guy whose name I can pronounce, reports October 14, 2020 in Fort Worth, Texas, 2 masked men zip-tied the hands of a Tarrant County family late on Tuesday night during a home invasion robbery. The incident occurred around 11:15 p.m. Tuesday in the 5300 block of Hidden Valley Court near Rendon and Mansfield. The address is in unincorporated Tarrant County. After the men zip-tied the family, they pointed guns at them and demanded money. The father and son broke free and fought back. The son, whose age wasn't provided, began to fight with one of the intruders, prompting the other intruder to shoot him in the abdomen and right arm. The second intruder shot the son. the Tarrant County Sheriff's Office said in a news release on Wednesday morning. Black and white photos released by the Sheriff's Office show the two men being the home invaders, in light-colored hoodies and dark masks with guns in their hands. They were able to leave the home with firearms, a watch, and 2 wallets. Lieutenant Jennifer Gabbert, a Sheriff's Office spokesperson, couldn't say how the men got into the family's home or why they might have chosen this family to rob. Anyone with information on the home invasion is asked to call the Sheriff's Office at 814, starting over. The Sheriff's Office number is actually 817-884-1213, or call Detective Jarvis at 817-884-3739. 817-884-3739. The son is recovering in a hospital on Wednesday with non-life-threatening injuries. The father then shot at the men as they ran away. Now, first, this is a Texas incident where victims are allowed to use deadly force to recover stolen property or capture fleeing criminals. Don't try this shooting at them as they're running away at home unless your home's in Texas. It is unlikely that these home invaders did not plan to kill the witnesses. If they did, why the zip ties in the first place? That makes it likely a totally random crime by a couple of amateurs. I would expect a fairly fast arrest as they tried to dispose of their loot in the neighborhood pawn shop. It's probably best for all concerned that the shots fired at the fleeing bad guys missed. The lawyer expenses and mental health issues are pretty much eliminated. These never go completely right, and recriminations, and I should have done this and I should have done that, are much worse. If you have a chance not to fire, don't fire. We're going to break again for a few words from some of our friends and associates. I'll be right back. Attorney Donald J. Green, a common guest of mine on Fired Up. He can be reached at 702-409-8239. He specializes in gun case litigation. He is your man. Don Green, 702-409-8239. And Battlefield Vegas, my new kind of home for this show. They're on Circus Circus Drive, directly behind the Circus Circus Hotel and Casino. You can find them there with CCW classes and an amazing place for gun rentals, everything you could possibly imagine. Check out, if you're in town as a tourist, check out battlefieldvegas.com. And I'm back again. Cincinnati.com reports October 9, 2020 in Kenton County. Commonwealth's attorney Rob Sanders says a fatal shooting Friday, October 9 on I-75 in Fort Wright was justified, and his office is not pursuing charges. A 43-year-old man from Cincinnati called 911 at 1:22 in the afternoon to report he'd been involved in a crash with another vehicle in what he described as a road rage incident. Witness statements to police suggested a rolling confrontation between the two men started somewhere between Buttermilk Pike and Dixie Highway exits in Fort Mitchell as they traveled north on I-75. A 911 call recorded a verbal confrontation between the two men before gunshots were heard. The 43-year-old then told the dispatcher he fired shots from his gun and struck the other man. He can also be heard administering first aid as the recording continues. Commonwealth's attorney Rob Sanders stated, Kentucky law states an individual is justified in the use of physical force upon another when the individual believes such force is necessary to protect against the use of lawful force by another person, of unlawful force by another person. The investigation by Fort Wright and Kenton County Police Departments conclusively found the shooter was reasonably in fear of his own life and responded lawfully. The Hamilton County coroner identified the man killed Friday in a reported road rage shooting in northern Kentucky was a local 41-year-old. He suffered multiple gunshot wounds and died at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center. Investigators found multiple empty liquor bottles in the deceased's SUV. Autopsy and toxicology reports on him are still pending. Police do not believe the two men knew each other. The 43-year-old was headed home from work in Boone County. It was believed the 41-year-old was headed home after a day of fishing. Witnesses shared photos with the police, according to the release. The 41-year-old can be seen in the photos with his rifle in hand, threatening a bystander before pointing the gun at the 43-year-old. Neither man, in this case, had a criminal record. Both men lawfully possessed the firearms they were carrying. Police found a .30-06 rifle on the ground near where the deceased fell. Police recovered a Taurus 9mm handgun from the shooter that he had on him. Investigators believe the 43-year-old fired his handgun 4 times and the 41-year-old did not fire the rifle. The rifle was found unloaded with a trigger lock in place. The Commonwealth's attorney, Rob Sanders, said, there is no way for the 43-year-old to know that the rifle being stuck in his face was inoperable, so that does not make his reaction unreasonable or unlawful. In fact, anyone who has a gun pointed at him should assume the gun is loaded. Road rage strikes again. We have had a number of similar road rage shootings here in Las Vegas. Most of those are equally stupid. Everybody is wound up by the stay-at-home orders, lost or suspended jobs, and worries about the COVID pandemic. Try to calm down, let the little things slide. These shootings are life-changing events. If you think life is unfair now, just wait till you do something this stupid. If you really need to defend your life, of course, do that. But if you can just drive away, that's a much wiser tactic. In this incident, calling 911 and rendering first aid shows the shooter's good guy intent to the entire world. We're going to break here for one last commercial, I believe, and perhaps the commercial on my book. And then I'll come right back with one more story. Don't go away. My latest book, Self-Defense with Firearms, Use of Force in Nevada, is now available on Amazon Kindle for $4.95. You can download it now. It contains examples of dozens of shootings and pointing a firearm cases that I personally experienced in my 24 years in law enforcement, or where I testified in court or deposition as a firearm and use of force expert. The book is about the use of firearms in defense of yourself and others in my home state of Nevada. I have appeared as an expert witness in Nevada courts dozens of times, and that experience has shown me the necessity of putting pen to paper once again. Nevada state law as printed can be misleading to those of you who read it, as it is written in legal jargon, what I usually call lawyer speak. These statutes are also bent or even broken by the courts in their everyday decisions that we generally call case law. Those are rulings that say this or that statute does not apply in a particular incident and similar cases. That causes the law you are depending on when you make a decision to use your firearm only partially or not apply at all to your actions. Relevant Nevada statute numbers are included here and there, so readers may look up current wording on the Nevada State website. Teaching firearms in 28 law enforcement academies, including cadets from 26 different Nevada agencies, personally instructing over 30,000 concealed firearm permit students and 20,000 private security officers, I've discovered a lot of commonalities in deadly force incidents. Less than 100 pages, this book offers advice that can save lives and costs of expensive defense lawyers to reduce your losses in the inevitable civil lawsuits that follow these incidents. Get a copy, learn how to avoid, prepare for, and react to life-threatening situations. One last thing, we're going to run a little bit long on this show, but this I have to discuss because it is so vitally important to everybody watching this. Presidential candidate Joe Biden has commented that he intends to amend the Protection of Lawful Commerce Act Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act by presidential executive order to make manufacturers, distributors, and sellers of firearms responsible for misuse of firearms under a strict liability theory. Currently, the PLCAA is a United States law which protects firearms manufacturers and dealers from being held liable when crimes have been committed with their products. However, both manufacturers and dealers can still be held liable for damages resulting from defective products, breach of contract, actual criminal misconduct, and other actions for which they're directly responsible in the same manner that any U.S.-based manufacturer of consumer products is held responsible. If the manufacturer sells, or the seller of the gun sells you a gun where the safety's broken, or something like that, where it's you can still sue him for an unsafe product. The reference for the PLCAA is codified at 15 U.S.C. 7901 to 7903. If the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Firearms Act is amended as Biden proposes, this is actually a old Bernie Sanders policy, the firearm industry will likely close the next day. If any insurance company would write a policy covering this type of liability, no one could afford it. In other words, if you own a gun and you sell it to your neighbor and it's stolen from him, and then somebody else steals it from the guy who stole it, and then it's used in a crime, you are responsible for it because you're the guy who put the firearm in commerce. You follow the logic there? Like Chevy is responsible for drunk drivers and so on, right? Nobody could write insurance for this because you are responsible for the gun forever under a strict liability policy. If Biden is elected, nobody could risk selling a firearm, and his new guns are, Beto O'Rourke, remember that? We'll take the ones that you want to keep. You are giving up your guns if Biden wins the presidency. No way around it. Check out my recent shows at firedupwithboberwin.com. It contains several dozen episodes. Please patronize our friends and supporters. I'll be back next Thursday on my website, Fired Up with Bob Irwin, the American Guns and Glory Network, numerous other websites, television, and radio stations. When watching any media, click on subscribe, and the new shows will be sent to your phone or computer automatically. My logo merchandise, hats, shirts, and books are available at Battlefield Vegas, just behind Circus Circus on the Las Vegas Strip. If you are ever in Las Vegas, Battlefield is a must-see attraction. You can shoot a minigun or any of hundreds of firearms and even crush a car with an Abrams tank at their associated outdoor facility. Transportation is provided. You can contact them at info@battlefieldvegas.com. info@battlefieldvegas.com. Thank you so much for watching Fired Up. Please remember to vote. We'll be back next week. Take care.